Hey, good morning, Freeman High School. Welcome parents, guardians, students, community members, and all of you in attendance today. For those of you who are watching, I just want a quick jump on a couple of logistical things as we did last week. You are able to access the Google Doc just like we did last week should you have any questions during today's presentation. Our very own Ms. Lori Kaplan will be facilitating a Q&A section later on today for us during this presentation. Should you guys have any questions regarding today's presentation. For those of you who don't know, I am Mr. Sanders. I'm one of the assistant principals here at Freeman High School, and I have the privilege of introducing our guest today. Her name is Ms. Jericia Johnson. She is a licensed professional counselor with over 24 years experience working within the community mental health field. Ms. Johnson has a bachelor's of social work from VCU, a master's of counseling from VSU, and is licensed by the state of Virginia as a licensed professional counselor. Ms. Johnson has had a dual role in mental health field. She has her very own practice, renewal counseling and consultation services, as well as works as an emergency service clinician for Henrico County. Ms. Johnson is passionate about mental health and breaking stigma and misconceptions in the communities of color about seeking mental health treatment. Ms. Johnson is looking forward to answering all of your questions today, should you have any, about mental health treatment and how you can care for your mental health wellness. Students throughout the viewing process, you were able to again ask questions into that Google Doc, and Ms. Kaplan will get to those questions as she can throughout the presentation. Ms. Johnson, I want to thank you for your time today and for joining us, and we look forward to speaking with you and hearing about your presentation. So without further ado, Ms. Jericia Johnson, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Mr. Sanders, for having me and inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, your staff, and students about mental health and mental health wellness. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am a licensed professional counselor, and what that means is that I am able to professionally give people counseling services, and it is approved through the state of Virginia. And I'm able to take insurance as well as private payment for people to come and receive therapy. What is therapy? I think we see a lot about what therapy is on television. I don't have a couch in my office. People don't come and lay down and tell me all their problems and I fix everything with a magic wand. That's not quite how therapy works. What therapy really is an opportunity for someone to come in and talk about some things that are really causing them struggles, burdens that they're carrying, issues that they've had for a long time, barriers to their progress. And they want to have an objective point of view. And that's what I provide. Someone who's non-judgmental, not critical, will give them a space to say the things that they need to say and not make them feel bad about feeling that way. I also ask questions along the way to help them think about their circumstances and their issues perhaps differently than they have been thinking about it. And then together we try to come up with some solutions to help improve the quality of their life. So that's what I do as a therapist. I have my own private practice, I have my own office, and people come and see me during the week. My second position is with Henrico County. I work as an emergency services clinician, and what that job entails is that I do crisis evaluations for people who are really in mental health crises. So these may be people who are feeling suicidal and may have done something impulsive to harm themselves, and now they are in need of intervention, perhaps a serious intervention like a hospital. I would be the person to come in and talk with those individuals to determine the best route to keep them safe as well as to offer them treatment. So that's a little bit about what my roles are in the mental health community in a nutshell, very small nutshell. What I wanted to do is just provide some space to talk with you guys a little bit about what you feel like your mental health needs may be. Right now, we are living in some very unique times. We are in a pandemic, and that has caused us to have a lot of restrictions on our lives that we never expected or were able to plan or prepare for. That can take a toll on our mental health. I don't think any of us realized how important it was for us to have social connections with each other. Going to school in the past seemed like a horrible thing, a chore, but now I bet a lot of you are missing walking through the halls, missing engaging with your peers as well as the teachers, the staff. We really get a lot of fulfillment out of being connected socially. This pandemic has really caused us to have barriers in doing that. A lot of us may have noticed that we are starting to feel a little depressed. What is depression? Depression can be a long-standing feeling of sadness, feeling down, not feeling very motivated, not really having interest in a lot of things that you used to have interest in. You may notice it's harder to get out of bed in the morning. It takes a whole lot of energy to do really simple things. You may realize that you aren't as interested in showering, aren't as interested in putting on clean clothes, putting on your makeup, combing your hair, don't really want to be around people, don't really have a lot to say, may notice changes in your appetite. You may be sleeping too much, or you can't sleep at all. So depression is something that can affect all of us. And especially when circumstances or environment changes in the way that it has in this pandemic, we can all be affected by these types of symptoms. So what do? It's really important to try to keep up a routine, no matter how small it is. Having a plan, having structure is going to keep you motivated during these very unique times. Being able to have a goal for yourself every day, whether it's just to get up in the morning and turn around and make my bed, or put on some clean clothes, or try to eat something. Having a routine to try to link you to some normalcy is definitely going to make you feel better and to help stave off some of those symptoms of depression. I'd like to open it up for questions. If you guys had any questions for me related to mental health needs, any questions that I could answer specifically about mental health wellness, how to develop a mental health wellness routine, what do you do if you need to reach out for help? I'm open to whatever questions you may have.
Great, thank you so much. We actually have a question that just came in. How long have you been working in therapy? What are your biggest recommendations for motivation during school?
Okay. I have been working in the mental health field for about 24 years, so I'm giving my age away a little bit. And I've been specifically working with individuals in a therapy type of role for probably about the last 20 years of my career. I've done a whole lot of things in the mental health field throughout my 24 years. I started my private practice, which means I started working for myself in 2019. What would be my recommendations in terms of how to go about linking with the therapist? Was that the second part of the question? I think I've lost your sound, Ms. Kaplan.
Okay, the second part of the question, sorry, I could not get myself unmuted. What are your biggest recommendations for motivation during school? And, you know, a lot of the questions that seem to be coming in, which is what I was reading. What can I do if I start losing motivation to study?
Okay.
A lot of motivation.
Okay. Sure. Motivation is something that is kind of difficult to really manage, especially when external factors are making it difficult to stay motivated. If we think about it, if we lived in a perfect world and every day was sunny and we had all kinds of fun things to do, it'd be easy to stay motivated. But unfortunately, that's not life. We don't live in a perfect world. And right now we live in a really imperfect world with everything that's going on with the pandemic. So how do you stay motivated? How do you keep yourself going? Because even though you may not feel like it, you still have responsibilities. You still have expectations. You need to do well in school. You have to work toward your future goals. How do we do that? For us adults, we have to get up every morning and go to work so that we can take care of ourselves and our families. One thing about motivation that can make it feel really overwhelming is if you have too much stuff on your plate. You're trying to do too many things at once. My suggestion, break down your goals into small bite-sized pieces. So if your goal for the day is to study for 3 classes, write an essay, and do a bunch of other work that you need to do, that feels like a lot just saying it out loud. So how do you manage it? Break it down into small pieces. Figure out what needs to be done first, what is the priority, and then figure out how many steps it's going to need for me to get that done. And then follow the steps. Take breaks when you need. Encourage yourself. Let yourself know that whatever temporary discomfort you might be feeling as you're trying to get through this task, it is just temporary. And that the moment you get through it and you accomplish the task, the feeling that you're going to have of accomplishing something and doing what you set out to do should hopefully help motivate you to do the next thing on your list. Making lists is very helpful, but once again, don't bite off more than you can chew. If you're having a low energy day, that might not be the day to plan to do a whole lot of things that take a lot of energy. Gauge for yourself how much energy you think that you have and how much energy I need to get tasks done. And then you break those tasks down into tiny little pieces. So for instance, if the task is to get up on time, set your alarm. And if you're like me, you got to set your alarm a couple different times in order to finally be able to get those feet on the ground and get moving. So my biggest recommendation, prioritize and then break things down into bite-sized, manageable pieces. Don't be too hard on yourself. If you don't get everything on your plate finished, it's okay. Tomorrow is another day. Give yourself some grace. Be kind to yourself. You are doing the best that you can, and you have to remind yourself of that. You are doing the best that you can with the resources that you have. And so try your best. If you don't get it all done, try it again tomorrow.
Okay, great. That was very helpful. So they want to know how do I know if I need therapy then? So a lot of people are feeling like they lack motivation. At what point does someone go to therapy? Do their parents know? What age group do you work with?
Okay.
Seems to be a lot of questions coming in.
Okay, sure. Let me start with, for myself, I work with mostly adults. I do work with some adolescents on specific cases. I don't work with anybody who is under the age of 14 in my practice. Now, how do you know if you need therapy? One of the ways that we gauge if somebody would need to come see a professional like me is to determine how much whatever the issue is that you're dealing with is impacting your functioning and impacting the quality of your life. If it is causing barriers to you getting things done, to you feeling good about yourself, to you feeling like you have purpose, then it may be time to talk with someone. It may be time to share the load with someone and to figure out a different way of problem solving your issue. Now, if you are a child and you're under the age of 18 and you come into therapy, there are some rules that legally I would have to follow in terms of being able to share information with your guardian or your parent. Most of the information that you share in a session is confidential, kind of just like the privilege that's between a lawyer and a client. The things that you say in my office in therapy are private and are just between you and I. The only reason that I would have to step outside of those bounds of confidentiality would be if I had safety concerns. So that would be if, for instance, you came into my office and you told me that you were really struggling and you were perhaps having some thoughts about wanting to hurt yourself. At that point, by law, I have to inform someone in order to make sure that you can remain safe and that we reduce the risk. Those would be some of the reasons why we would need to step out of the bounds of confidentiality in working with a child. So bottom line, no. When you come to my office, I don't turn around and call your parents and say, guess what? So-and-so told me this and this and this and this. They don't like you. They don't this. I don't do that, because that would be a breach of the relationship that you and I would be trying to develop as a therapist and a client. However, certain issues related to safety, issues related to child abuse, those would be things that I would have to, by law, share with someone in order to make sure that you were safe.
So some of the questions coming up now, what if I'm having thoughts of just not being here, just getting away from this whole life? Are people, is that normal to feel? And how do I know if someone around me who's feeling that way maybe needs more help than they think they need? How do I help them?
Sure. Absolutely. Is it normal to sometimes feel so overwhelmed with life and the things that are going on and your personal circumstances that sometimes you think, wow, life would be a lot easier if I didn't wake up, if I wasn't a burden on people, if I didn't have to deal with these things anymore? Thoughts like that are actually pretty normal. I think in all of our lives, we've had moments where we've thought about, gosh, wouldn't it be so much easier if I went to sleep and just never woke up? So don't get worried if you have those types of thoughts from time to time. What it is an indicator that you're overwhelmed. And it's an opportunity for you to look at, where do I need to readjust things in my life? I'm really feeling overwhelmed to the point that I don't want to be here anymore. I need to figure out what I need to do to make some changes. Now, the place where it would become an issue of concern is, first of all, how intense are those thoughts? Do you find yourself thinking about it multiple times a day, doing research about ways to harm yourself, talking with people about it, sending text and messages to people in your life about, I don't want to be here anymore? Have you looked at a bottle of pills and thought, I might take these? Those are issues then that become concerning, because not only are you having these thoughts, but now you're thinking of a way to actually do it. And it sounds like you may have some intent. That would be the time for you to talk with someone, to tell an adult that you trust, your parents, school counselor, a teacher, someone in your community, a friend's parent, someone at your church, pulling them aside and letting them know, I'm having some thoughts that are kind of concerning me, and I feel like I need some help. And in terms of help, you then need to be open to what that help may look like. Usually that help is definitely going to be encouraging you to talk to a professional, whether it be a doctor, someone who could actually prescribe medication if that's what you needed to help you feel better, or a counselor like me, somebody who's open to hear what your struggles are, why you feel so overwhelmed, and why you feel like taking your life might be the only way to deal with it, and helping you figure out some other options that you haven't thought about for dealing with those things. So to answer the original question, no, it's not abnormal to have thoughts like that. But if you continue to have thoughts, they increase in frequency and they become more detailed in nature, then yes, definitely reach out to someone that you trust and let them know that you're struggling so that they can offer you some help.
Okay. And what about if it's somebody that I think might need help?
Sure.
I approach it, and what do I do?
Sure. If you have a friend who might be struggling, you know that they've been having some issues. When you're talking with them, you notice that they're talking about things that are concerning to you. They might be sending you midnight texts that say things that kind of make you uncomfortable or concerned. I definitely reach out to that friend, and I would definitely be pretty direct in what you ask them. I'd ask them, do you feel like you don't want to be here anymore? These messages that you're sending me, does this mean that you're thinking about taking your life? I'm really concerned because I care about you and I don't want to lose you. I want to help you. I want to provide support. Can I go with you to talk with someone? A lot of times the idea of talking with someone can feel very scary to folks. They don't want to do that. They're embarrassed because they're having these thoughts. They feel guilty, that they're having these thoughts. So it's kind of hard to want to do that on your own. So offering to go with someone to talk with a responsible adult, about the things that are concerning them could be all of the support that they need to kind of open up to someone and hopefully get the help that they need.
Great. Thank you. Another question is about anxiety. So people said something about waking up, feeling panicked. What can that person do, or actually a couple people do, to get over anxiety or panic attacks?
Sure. Well, let's talk a little bit about what anxiety is. Long time ago, when we were humans living in prehistoric times, we needed to have a way to determine if we were in danger. And the way that has happened is through the release of certain chemicals in our body. When we are met with a threat or a perceived threat, our body releases chemicals called cortisol and adrenaline. Those things help us to be ready to fight or flee. So I'm sure you've heard of the fight or flight syndrome, and that's what that was for, to help us to be able to muster up all of the energy that we could to deal with a threat. So what anxiety is our body gets a sense that there's a threat. Usually it's a perceived threat. It's not a real threat, but it's a perceived threat. So our body doesn't quite know the difference. So it sends all of those chemicals rushing through our body to help us get ready to fight or flee. A lot of times, some of the side effects of those chemicals in our system is this feeling of jitteriness, restlessness, nervousness. We may notice some physiological changes. Our heart starts beating fast. We start sweating. We start breathing more rapidly in order to take in more oxygen. Our body getting ready to fight, our body getting ready to flee. Anxiety usually is based in some type of fear, some sense of lack of control. And then our mind kind of takes it and expands it and exaggerates it into a whole lot of different things. Some of the ways to deal with anxiety can be through medication to help our brain not release so much of those chemicals at certain times. But a larger part of treating anxiety is to really look at the things that you're scared of. Really look at what the fear is. Figure out, is this something that I really should be afraid of? Is it something that I can resolve? Is it something that's out of my control and I just have to accept it? Or is it something that I need to let go? That is what coming to a therapist, someone like me, would be the process that we would go through to help you address your anxiety, is to look at those things that make you anxious, figure out if there's a way to resolve those things or if it's a way to let those things go. We also would teach you different techniques to manage when you do feel like you're having panic symptoms. Things like grounding exercises to help you bring yourself to a more mindful, present state. We would teach you things like breathing exercises. When you're anxious and you're breathing really rapidly, we teach you how to modulate and manage your breathing, which helps to calm you down. We teach you things like visualization to see yourself on the other side of these anxiety symptoms, what that might look like, what I have to look forward to. Those are kind of very few strategies. There's tons more to help people with anxiety.
Okay, we have an athlete who says they feel like he feels like, or she feels like she can't be productive. So used to being so busy, but then they feel like they don't know how to keep themselves entertained. And they are not feeling good because of that.
Right, exactly. This pandemic is forcing us to look at our lives very differently. It's forcing us, first of all, to slow down and to sit still a lot. And that's not something that a lot of us are used to doing or like to do. As Americans, we live super busy, super complex and complicated lives. We are doing multiple things all day long. The pandemic has shut a lot of that down. And so now, what do we do with ourselves? What do we do with this time on our hands? This is a time for you to get creative, to figure out Are there things that I've always wanted to do that now I have time to pursue? Am I keeping in contact and staying connected with people the best way that I can? Am I checking on my friends? Am I checking on my family? On days when it's nice outside, am I getting out and enjoying nature? Am I taking a walk? Am I doing things to stay physically active? Am I taking this as an opportunity to learn a new hobby, read a book? Am I taking naps and getting rest? Am I doing things like volunteering where I can in ways that I can be helpful in the community? Am I walking my dog? Am I spending time with my pet? Am I catching opportunity for you to really kind of begin to actually enjoy life? We work so hard, we stay so busy, we don't really get a lot of time to sit back and enjoy the space that we're in. Now we're being forced to. This is an opportunity for you to get creative and figure out how to use this time so that when it's over, I'm a better person. I've done things that I can be proud of and say that I've accomplished. I've given back to the people that I care about and to myself. And I'm ready to take on the new challenges that living in a world post-pandemic are going to offer me.
Okay, great. And one student asked, do you help others that are having intense behavior?
Can I have clarification on what intense behavior is?
I didn't, that's all they said. I didn't know if it's like something that you were familiar with in your field that I don't know any more than that information.
Right.
Maybe that person can write another question and explain it.
Yeah, that would be helpful if they could give me a little bit more information about what they mean by intensive or intense behavior.
And we also have a question about your career and how you chose it and how it's interested in a career path.
Sure, absolutely. I went to high school at Monacan High School, go Chiefs, and when I hated math. So when I thought about going to college, I looked for a major where I did not have to take any more math classes, and social work was one of those majors. So I said, I'm gonna, there's really no magic to how I got into this. I just didn't want to take any more math classes. So I started the program, and unfortunately, I did have to take math classes. They tricked me. But one thing that I found out is that I really liked talking with people. But more importantly, I really liked listening to people. And I liked listening to not what people were saying, but what they weren't saying, the messages behind their words. And I noticed that I felt like I had a pretty natural ability to connect with people. I'm a military brat. I've lived in about 15 different areas in a really short period of time. So I got used to meeting people, building rapport with people very quickly because you had to. And in 2-3 years, I'd move somewhere else and have to start all over. So I noticed that that was a talent that I had. And I wanted to figure out how could I use that to help people. So I started taking classes in social work and really felt like it resonated with me, being able to help people on a very grassroots level in the community that I lived in the communities that I saw around me. I got my start actually working with the homeless while I was still in undergraduate. That is where I really learned how to be a social worker. Those folks at the homeless shelter, they taught me a whole lot of lessons, and I appreciate that to this very day. And I use all of those lessons as I created my practice style over the years. As I started working in the field, I realized that I really was intrigued by mental health, especially individuals who have serious mental illness, because they seem to be one of the most disenfranchised populations that we came across. I noticed that they seemed very isolated. A lot of them had really burned bridges with a lot of people in their life, and that they were in need of support and help. I got connected to that population and have worked with that population ever since in a lot of different roles. I really enjoy the work that I do because I feel like I can really see the benefit of the things that I do in people's lives. I've had people come back to me years later and say, remember, I was on your caseload, you helped me with this, you helped me with that, I still remember this. And that is so heartwarming to know that in the span of their lifetime, I had a little bit of impact. So that's how I got into my career.
Well, great. And that was it's time for us to end because
Okay.
the time period has come to a close. But that was so helpful. And I hope that a lot of people benefited from this. And remember, guys, your school counselors can also give you some advice and people to talk to. So please reach out and hug someone in your house today, right? Hugs help. Take care.
Absolutely.
Have a good day.